Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Megan Isidore. I'm the River Otter Ecology Project co-founder and executive director. Happy International Beaver Day. Friends of the Verde River is seeking beavers in the Verde and beyond, and you can help. River Otter Ecology Project doesn't have beaver in our name, but we are really big fans of all wetland species and engineers. And we are harnessing the power of community scientists, that's you, to support healthy waterways. Today, I'm going to offer a whirlwind overview of beavers and the Verde, how to find their track and sign, how to report your findings to help us find the beavers and use the data we collect to inform management for the gorgeous Verde. First, a word from a photographer and naturalist who's observed and followed beavers on the Verde for quite a while, and this is Madison Ford. Madison, there she is.
Hello.
Hi, Madison. Thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here? This is your
Yeah,
video.
absolutely. This was actually 2 nights ago on the Verde River, just south of Cottonwood. So we have two beavers here. We believe it is a mom and her pup, which just enjoying some snacks on the side of the Verde River. And you can see all the bugs flowing by and they're just taking on their normal routine. It's such a pleasure to witness them just going about their day. And it's one of the highlights of my day every day. So I get to go down there after work every day and say hi to my beaver friends. And yeah, I'm excited to share more.
Thank you. And we'll be showing a bunch of videos and photos from Madison as we go through our presentation. But let's begin with a little bit about beavers in general. Beavers were once found nearly everywhere in Arizona and all over North America that has permanent water. But by the mid 1800s, their populations had collapsed throughout North America due to trapping and loss of wetlands. By the early 20th century, beavers had been locally extirpated, locally missing from much of their Arizona range, but the Verde still has a resident beaver population. We are seeking to find and document where they are living and building in the Verde watershed. If we can understand what kind of areas beavers are living and building dams in, then we can use that information to identify how to encourage and support beavers in doing what they do best. Slow the flow of water and spread out the floodplain, allowing for benefits to the entire waterway. So why beavers? Beavers are ecosystem engineers. They're a keystone species, meaning their engineering disproportionately shapes entire ecosystems. Disproportionately in comparison to their numbers, that is. I'm going to talk a little bit about benefits of beavers, and you can follow along with these two infographics, which I like so much because they really give you a good idea of what's going on when beavers are managing waterways. When they build dams, they widen the floodplains, as you see on the photo on the left, and they raise water tables, recharge aquifers. They create wetland habitat that supports fish, amphibians, birds, and mammals, pretty much everybody in the watershed. Their daily work transforms narrow streams into complex, braided channels and can turn entire forests into deep interconnected ponds. That engineering benefits countless species, as we just talked about, from deer and raccoons to frogs and otters, salamanders, butterflies, and even bats. Beaver wetlands also improve rainwater retention, so important for the dry West, and reduce erosion, store carbon, and they act as natural fire breaks. Riparian areas near beaver activity burn way less severely in wildfires, and the dead snags that are created by beaver flooding can provide nesting habitat for raptors and for cavity nesting birds. Beaver activity even creates a really unique microhabitat, the beaver meadow. When an abandoned pond gradually fills with sediment and dries out, it leaves behind a shallow, treeless basin with nutrient-rich soil, prime habitat for grasses, wildflowers, insects, pollinators. It's a wonderful situation when you've got beavers on board. And I'm going to talk next on where and when to find beavers, track or sign. I have to say, you're more likely on a casual walk to see beaver sign than to see an actual beaver. But if you're patient, quiet, and keep looking, you may very well see a beaver one of these days. Look for their tracks and signs along sandy, muddy, or vegetated riverbanks. You might find areas where limbs have been dragged into the water, and they're pretty obvious because they're big animals and they're often dragging large pieces of vegetation. Beavers come ashore and they gnaw off branches, and then they take them back to do their engineering work or to eat later. So look along the shores for branches that show the tooth marks of these big rodents. When I visited the Verde last year, I found beaver gnawings, which is on the pictures on the right, and a small dam along the river at Tuzagut. But I did not see tracks at that time. I kind of wish I had known more about beavers then, because I would have taken a long look around that area where the beaver gnawings were to see if I could find any more signs of beaver activity besides the dam that I saw. So beaver tracks are often obliterated by the tail as it drags over them, but you might find partial tracks or tracks that show a clear mark as if something heavy was dragged over them. I love this video. Dawn and dusk are good times to see beavers, but it makes it hard to get good images. This is a trail camera image that we got from an otter research project we were doing some years ago, and we got this beautiful big happy beaver on the video. You can see how stocky and how powerful beavers are. There, you see how short their front legs are as compared to their great big hindquarters. They're incredibly strong animals. They weigh about 640 to 70 pounds ish. And they're, as you can see, their size and weight really can vary. And here's a photo. Madison, tell us about this photo. Is she here? I don't see Madison. I don't think I warned her that I was putting this in.
Yeah, no worries. This was just this winter. You can see that it was 25 degrees, and it was so exciting when we were able to capture this. We actually put the camera there because we saw gnawings all around, and you could see the slide marks going into the water. So we thought we're gonna for sure see a beaver here. So that's how we ended up getting this photo.
So great. Thank you. So if you, like Madison, see beaver track or sign, what should you do? How do you become a community scientist and join our project? It's not very difficult. Take a photo, take a bunch of photos. I am going to show you how to do it, and you can use that QR code to bookmark your phone or bookmark your computer so that you'll have it for the future. And let me move up here. Here is Beaver Seeker, our community science form to get beaver information. And it's really easy. It's much like Otter Spotter if you've ever done an input an otter video or photo. So you have to put in your first and last name and your email address. We need that email address so that we can get in touch with you if we have questions. You can put your phone number in if you want, but it's not mandatory. All the red starred things on here are mandatory. We need the observation date and the observation time and the general location. Super important because sometimes if you don't zoom all the way in on the map when you're inputting your little blue arrow here, we don't get a good idea of where the location is. So it's good to put in the general location. Then you go to the map, and I'm going to zoom out on the map. It looks much more like this when you first get to the map. And then you want to go over to the area where you saw the beaver. Maybe you saw it on Agua Fria River down here. So you click on it with your little arrow, and that moves the arrow. But then, super important, you really want to zoom in. So plus, 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 make sure that is where you saw it. And if it is, great. You just leave it there, or you might want to move it a little bit. Once you're satisfied that you've got as close as you can to the place that you saw the beaver or the beaver sign, go down here. If you count saw a beaver, you can put in how many. If you didn't, and you're going to see a lot more beaver signs than actual beavers. So just do the best you can. Put in dam, lodge, chewed sticks or vegetation, track, scat, or other. It's not so important for you to know the difference between a dam and a lodge. Sometimes it's hard to say, and that is totally fine. Just take as many pictures as you can to give a good idea of the area. You can put comments in here if you want to, and then you can drag and drop your images and one video into the form. And finally, you just describe your affiliation, meaning whatever best describes you. A lot of you are going to be two or three of these things, and that's fine. Just choose one that you think is the best one, and then click submit, and you're done. And you have joined our project, and we appreciate it so much. So thank you in advance for doing this. And I'll give you a minute to get this QR code onto your phone. The QR code is, and the link to the form will also be on FOVR's website. In fact, they're on there now. Um, okay, now we're going to move on to talk a little bit about beaver tracks and signs, because tracks and signs are what you're going to see most. First of all, tracks. Look at that back foot. I love this photo because look at that huge back flipper that moves their big bodies through the water so gracefully and strongly. And then their back feet are 4.75 to 7 inches long-ish and 3.5 to 5.5 inches wide. They're big. They have those major back paddle feet. Their front foot is very, very different. Much, much smaller, 2.5 to 3.5 inches wide and 2.5 to 3.5 long-ish. And they both have 5 digits, but you see their front feet are not webbed like their back feet. And so that's a big difference when you're looking at their tracks. And here are some tracks in sand on the left. And you can see they're a little hard to see. A lot of times they're completely submerged by tail drags. And you don't see the four-toed front footprint, I mean the front prints very often because the hind print wipes out the front print a lot as they waddle along. And sometimes you don't see any prints at all because the large tail can wipe the tracks out entirely. So just know that when you're going along, you might see something like this in the mud. It's a little bit hard to interpret unless you know what you're seeing. So tracking is hard, even for any animal, tracking is hard and it takes practice. And we don't care if the photos that you send in are not that good or if you're not sure what they are, because we'll look at them and we'll help you figure it out and we will work with you to find out what we're seeing here. So on the left, you can see the two beaver tracks, the front and the rear, and on the right you see them as well. And thank goodness Kate has put in the sign, the marks to help us know what we're seeing. Hard to interpret, but keep at it. Don't give up. This is what's much easier to see and to interpret. Slides, canals, and trails. So beavers use established trails when they're traveling to and from feeding areas, and they often build themselves canals to make life easier. And the presence of canals and slides is a really sure sign that beavers inhabit an area. And there are a lot of those in various places along the Verde. So you look for areas where a beaver came out of the water and dragged its tail, making its way up the slope, and areas where it went back into the water, dragging branches. The drag marks are pretty easy to follow in sand, and you can follow them backward to find out where the beaver was working. Really interesting. And you see, beavers are big animals and they're dragging vegetation. So their slides are often very wide and very big. I love these photos by Rob Rich and Tori Ritter, who wrote a terrific survey manual on how to survey for beaver, and were kind enough to allow us to use these photos. More about canals and trails. They're water corridors for beaver travel and material transport, maintained with digging or dredging in the water and regular use. Trails serve the same purpose on land, but they're maintained just with regular use, obviously not with digging and dredging. But both of those features often lead to and from clippings, dams, lodges, caches, or other sites of frequent beaver activity. And if you look on the right, you'll see the bared mud on that trail. Beavers often disturb the mud, disturb the dirt, and cause mud on the trails from going back and forth in the water. Um, mm, the canals often feature disturbed substrate, which is what the photo on the left is. It's not a great photo. It's not at high enough resolution. But if you're looking along a beaver trail and you suspect beaver activity, a lot of times the gravel or stream bottom are really disturbed. And that's another possibility. If you see that, send us a photo of it if you can. Finally, canals and trails are travel networks for beavers, and they add diversity to water flow along streams. We're going to move on now to beaver gnawing. Beavers are amazing um, gnawers with their very big, very strong teeth. You've probably noticed that beaver teeth are orange. Orange is because they have iron in their teeth to keep them incredibly strong for gnawing down trees up to 3 feet wide. Um, they gnaw a groove all the way around the trunk in kind of an hourglass shape, like you see here. And trees of a diameter close to 3 feet can be felled by beavers. It's amazing. The downed trees are stripped of bark, and the beavers don't actually eat the bark. They eat the cambium, the layer inside the bark, and they leave the bark chips all around the tree. So you'll see that. On the Verde, the main target trees are Fremont cottonwood and Gooding's willow. So you want to look for that fresh white wood exposed at cut stumps and branches and wood chips scattered at the base. And of course, as time goes by, the trees become less white and more brown and more gray. Gnawings and clippings. These are very clear signs of beaver along the banks. And a lot of times, as in Madison's photo here, you'll see a whole bunch of these gnawings and clippings all over the place. They're often apparent either in big batches like this or in smaller batches in beaver active areas. And I want to talk now a little bit about scent mounds, which are another good sign of beavers. In scent marking, beavers actually build up a mound of mud on which to place their scent. They dive to the bottom, dig it up the mud with their front feet, swim to shore, and waddle over and deposit it at the water's edge. The purpose of the mound is to elevate the odor for better dispersal, intensify it on a moist substrate, and protect it from flooding as pond levels fluctuate. Scent mounds are typically located at trails and also on lodges and dams, and they serve to delineate family territories. Beavers are pretty territorial animals. And I am going to take you over now to a little video I found, which is just great, of beavers adding to a scent mound. Very interesting.
Hi everyone, Mike here. I'm really excited to share this video. You'll see here the video starts off with a beaver next to the prairie lily in Saskatoon, walking out of the water to add mud to a scent mound. Some of you know that beavers make scent mounds to mark their territory. They carry wet mud and debris as far up on the shore as they can, and you'll see as he turns around here, he sprays his scent on the mound.
Super interesting video. And scent mounds, hang on one second. Oops. One moment, please. Scent mounds often smell slightly vanilla-esque and slightly musky. I've never smelt one myself, but all of the accounts that I read about beaver scent mounds are that the smell isn't bad and nasty like a lot of wildlife scent markings are. I'm thinking about you, river otters. But they can smell like vanilla. And in fact, the castoreum, which is what causes the scent, was used to be and is sometimes still used in perfumes. Very interesting. And here's another example of a scent mound, a mound built up. A lot of them have a lot of leaves and twigs centered on top of them. What about the poop? What about the poop? Um, River otter poop is is pretty easy to recognize, and that's because their diet is woody or herbaceous plants and bark. Their droppings look like compressed sawdust, wood chips, and plant fibers, and their feces are typically round or cylindrical, like they are on here, and they can be 1.5 to 2.5 inches long and up to an inch in diameter. But of course, that really varies. And beaver scat can be light brown, tan, or green when it's fresh, and it often turns darker as it dries. And this was interesting to me because beavers defecate directly into the water a lot of times. Their scat is frequently seen floating on ponds near their dams or lodges. Of course it floats, it's made of wood chips. When beavers defecate on land, it's almost always near water. And now I'm going to talk about a bit about beaver shelters, where they live. They have both lodges and bank dens. Lodges are usually look like this. They're dome shaped. They're in the middle of a river or a pond or a lake, and they're usually associated with dams. They are freestanding and they're made of sticks and mud, like this one is. And bank dens, on the other hand, are holes where a beaver has just dug a tunnel into the bank. And they usually add some dead sticks on top of the underground den. Both lodges and bank dens have underwater entrances to exclude predators. And inside, they have a dry mound area where the beavers hang out and eat and raise their young. The giveaway is a mound of sticks and mud on the bank, sometimes with a trail leading to the water nearby. Or it can be the freestanding pond structure like I showed you recently. So, where to look on the Verde? Beaver are found along the Verde River Greenway, which now encompasses 35 river miles. The Greenway between Clarkdale and Bridgeport Bridge near Dead Horse Ranch State Park is one of the most accessible and wildlife-rich stretches. Beavers are also common at the Upper Verde River Wildlife Area near Paulden. In terms of habitat to look for cottonwood willow forest sections, especially areas with evidence of gnawing activity. Freshly cut stumps with the white hourglass shape, the chewed branches along the bank, and muddy slide marks will tell the story. And as we mentioned, dawn and dusk are best for possible beaver sightings. And the rest of the time, it's the signs like this that are going to be your story. And Madison, do you want to talk about this photo?
Yes, so this is the mother and her kit on the Verde River. And as you said, some of my favorite spots to go looking for them are near to Zigoot and Dead Horse State Park. But it's amazing because we've seen signs of them along the whole stretch of the Verde, even to where it connects with the Salt River in Phoenix. We've seen them down on that confluence as well. So anywhere, you're at near water, there's a good chance if you wait long enough, you'll see someone come by. So that's what we usually do when we wait for them.
That is awesome. Thank you. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about beaver courtship. Beavers typically mate in the water at night, and observations of mating beavers are somewhat scarce. But I happen to have found one on, oops, go back. I happen to have found one on the internet, so I'm going to show you this video of beavers mating. It's just fascinating. And if you turn your sound up, you can hear them making little noises. You can see the male is a little bit bigger than the female, and that's typical of beavers, but size is really relative and can be very different. You see, he's a very determined beaver. As beaver courtship progresses, it seems that they flirt quite a bit together before they engage in copulation. But as their courtship progresses, they engage in synchronized swimming patterns known as parallel swimming, which is fascinating to me. They swim side by side while mirroring each other's movements. And they tail slap and they bob their heads at each other as well. Beavers are classified as monogamous, but a genetic study, at least one, of beaver colonies found that more than half of the litters had been sired by two or more males. So monogamy is a little bit complicated in practice. Beavers mate from November through March, and they produce one litter per year with a few 3 to 4 young born about 105 days after mating. Beaver courtship. And look at that little one that they produced. What a beautiful baby. When they're born, beaver kits are born in the spring. So, probably in Arizona, my guess is that beaver kits are born in at least February to March. Madison, do you have any information on when? I think I asked you this and you weren't sure on when beaver kits are born in Arizona.
I'm not, but we did witness the baby riding on a tail in December, so that was exciting.
Yeah, that seems really early. Could it have been a bigger? It wasn't a tiny baby like these little potato babies, was it?
No, it was a little bit bigger.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Really. Well, we will find out more about this as we go along. I can't wait to find out. But when the kits are born, they are able to swim right away. And usually it's 3 or 4 babies, and the health of the mother influences how many kits are born. If she's finding food and she's in good nutritional shape, she can have more babies than otherwise. And they weigh about a pound at birth. So they look very much like these 4 little furry potatoes, really cute. And they have a full coat of fur and their eyes are open. The kits can swim at birth, thank goodness, but it takes them a month or more to figure out how to hold their breath and swim underwater. And when they get tired, as Madison just said, they catch a ride on their mother's back. Beavers do mate for life, that is true, and the older kits might help care for and defend the younger ones. Because they're social, there can be up to 18. I don't know where they got the number 18, but that's what I heard. As many as 18 beavers in one pond. When they're about two, they go off in search of their own territory. And beavers are territorial. So if one beaver is moving to a different beaver colony's territory, they might run into some fighting and some tussling. And they may go up to 10 miles to find a new pond. I just had to put this grooming video in here. The beavers need to keep their fur in really good shape to stay warm in the cold water. And they have oil in their fur that needs to be spread around and groomed and preened constantly to make sure that they stay waterproof. I think we have another one here. And Madison, can you talk about this one?
Yeah, so as you watch right here, you'll see the beaver chewing on the different pieces of grass and wood right here. And the second beaver approaches in just a second on the front of the right screen. And you can see this territorial aspect as the other beaver approaches the feeding area. So you'll see that second beaver right there. And as it turns to look, it says, give me some space. They actually do some tail bobbing right here. So you'll notice the tail pops out of the water. And I'm not sure what this behavior is, but it was very playful and it's just adorable to watch.
It's
So you'll
just
see those
adorable.
tails pop up and start swinging around. They're
Thank,
so fun.
thank you. So much fun. So here's a great photo by the amazing photographer Susie Esterhazy of, and you can see how clearly those orange incisors are really just big, tough teeth. They are herbivores and they eat the cambium, the inner bark of woody plants, but not the wood itself, as we mentioned. They prefer willow, cottonwood, aspen, birch, alder, and poplar. And in Arizona, primarily cottonwood and willow. So you'll probably find a lot of beavers around willow stands and cottonwood stands. But they do also eat aquatic vegetation like cattails, water lilies, pondweeds, and sedges. And they sometimes cache food underwater for winter access. When it's 25 degrees out there, they can just pop out and get their food rather than going on a long hunt for the right food that they want. We're going to talk a little about territory and communication. Beavers are highly territorial and they build their scent mounds that we talked about. They actively defend their colonies. They slap their tail loudly on the water when they want to warn colony members of danger. Lifespan and predators. In the wild, beavers live about 10 or 12 years, probably much longer in zoos. Predators on beavers include coyotes, bobcats, mountain lions, foxes, and large raptors. Adults, however, as you see, are large and they're capable fighters, and they're often just left alone. I've noticed that with river otters, who are unafraid to attack almost any animal, but I see river otters run from beavers. And it's interesting to me because river otters will fight and win against sharks, against pelicans, all of which are bigger than they are for the most part, but they do not mess with beavers. I think they're intelligently afraid of those very large choppers. Um, River otters will take beaver kits, and that's another reason that beavers don't like them, and they slap their tails on the water or chase them away from their dens in general. Beavers do get parasites and bacterial diseases, viruses, and they get hit by cars. So they get the very typical wildlife diseases and parasites. But generally, they do pretty well if they're given habitat and healthy food sources, like all of us. Now, I'm going to go through this bit very quickly because we're coming up on the end of the presentation, and I don't think you need to know too much about flow devices, but um, people are very concerned about flooding caused by beaver activity, especially in urban areas, of course. And there are, starting in the 1980s and 90s, really good ways to manage this, and they are well understood and they're used currently. And one of them is flow devices like this, like the last one and this one, and they help keep beavers away from those culverts. When a beaver sees or hears water flowing through a culvert, they think that's a leak that they have to dam. So they go up there and start damming it. But that's often not a really good solution for the people who live around it. And then another device that is used to support people around keep flooding from happening is a pond leveler. And there are different kinds of pond levelers. And again, I'm not going to go through this right now because I want to get to tree protection, which I think is what most people are interested in the Verde. There are several ways to protect your trees from beavers. You can see this guy is doing wire wrapping, which is the most reliable method. And I've seen that in Dead Horse Ranch State Park and other places in Utah that have a lot of beavers. Wrapping trees with 4 foot high galvanized welded wire is sufficient in most places. Leave a 12-inch space is the advice around the tree to allow it to grow. Chicken wire, do not use it. It's not strong enough and it will rust and collapse. That's happened to me when I've when I tried using chicken wire for keeping raccoons off some trees. It was not very useful. Sand and paint mixture is another good approach. You can add fine sand to exterior latex paint and apply it to the bottom 3 to 4 feet of a tree trunk. The gritty texture is apparently unpleasant to their teeth, and the paint can be color matched to the bark, and it doesn't need reapplication for several years. This does not work for saplings, according to the information, which need to be protected with wire fencing rather than the sand attempt. And you can do this strategically too. If you want to encourage beavers to stay in the area, protect only a few key trees so that the beavers will still have enough food to stay around. If you want to passively encourage them to move on, wrapping enough trees forces them to relocate. And finally, if you have groves of trees, you want to protect them by encircling them with the 2 by 4 inch mesh secured on posts. But the fence needs to fit close to the ground with no gaps of 3 or more inches because beavers are really good diggers and they will dig. Since beavers prefer not to travel more than about 100 feet from water on dry land, you can extend the fence ends 50 feet toward the water on each side, and that should be enough for you. There's all kinds of information about how to do this online if this is something that you need to do. And here are some more examples of tree wrapping. And finally, I do want to talk a little bit about coexistence because there's been in the past 30, 40, 50 years a philosophical and practical shift in beaver management nationwide, and it's clearly toward coexistence. The Arizona Game and Fish Department biologists are now testing a beaver translocation protocol specifically designed to turn problem beavers into habitat helpers. Beavers are our best engineers of waterways, and the more we can learn from them, the better off we will all be. So this is a shift away from simply moving nuisance beavers somewhere less disruptive toward harnessing their natural behaviors for ecological restoration. And why does this matter for Arizona? Well, Arizona has lost more than a third of its original wetlands since the late 1800s, according to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And beavers help address this by holding water back, as we talked about, allowing more time for it to infiltrate the system, increasing flow reach with water that's already there. Beaver activity in riparian habitat also widens the floodplain, which helps keep riparian corridors intact even during wildfire. So clearly, beavers make good sense. And I'm going to finish up with another great video by Madison and Darren. Madison, pop on and talk about this if you're here.
Yes, it's a little slow for me, but it this is one of my favorite videos of a beaver on the Verde, and you can see that back foot reaches up for a good scratch on the head, and it gives you a really good visual of their claws hanging there. But we often witness them sitting on their tails just like that. They like that to sit on, which is so fun.
So great. So I am wishing, thank you, Madison. Thank you. Special thanks to Madison and Darren Turner, who have contributed so much to my presentation, and to Rob Rich and Tori Ritter, Friends of the Verde River, Prescott National Forest, and the Restoration Management Group, all of whom are doing a great job to support the Verde. And I'm going to leave you with this. If you see beavers, if you see beaver sign, gnawings, poop lodges, or bank dens, make sure you report them to Beaver Seeker. Bookmark the form in your phone and your computer. Snap a photo or a bunch of photos and input your sighting. We will have more information on the website soon. And I thank you so much for being part of our research into the wonderful world of